Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome to 1010, your top 10 news in 10 minutes. I'm Andy Hong. Hopefully this time we didn't have any technical difficulties and you're watching this on Friday Pacific time. But, things happen and we can only work to fix those problems. Before we get into the scheduled news, I would like to cover a breaking news that emerged just hours ago. Russian opposition politician Boris Nemtsov, who is known to be outspoken against President Vladimir Putin, was shot and killed. He was to hold a major opposition rally in Moscow the day after tomorrow, but just as he was crossing the Bolshoi Kameny Bridge near the Kremlin at night, a white car drove up next to him and, according to CNN, the gunman, or possibly gunmen, shot Nemtsov 7 to 8 times with a pistol before driving off. President Putin has spoken against this killing, although he has always found himself at odds with Nemtsov. Ever since the downfall of the Soviet Union, Putin's popularity is on an all-time high while his opposition is slowly whittling down to a small minority of the population, a potentially very, very dangerous trend. There's more news on terrorism tonight. The English-speaking ISIS militant, who is known as Jihadi John by the press and has appeared in numerous beheading videos, has finally been identified. Officials have announced that this face of ISIS is Mohammed Emwazi, a Londoner who was originally born in Kuwait. It is reported that he has been serving the group since 2012. However, we cannot be completely sure that Jihadi John is indeed the same person as Mohammed Emwazi, as the terrorist has always been careful to cover his face. They best all be covering their faces in shame now. A new video surfaced yesterday showing ISIS fighters raiding a museum in Mosul, Iraq, and destroying countless artifacts that have survived centuries, if not millennia. These shameless monsters are not only destroying Iraq and Syria's status quo and future, but also their rich histories and utter destruction of culture. Meanwhile, Al-Shabaab, a Somali-based terrorist group, called for terrorist attacks on Western malls with, according to CBS, more emphasis on Minnesota's Mall of America, Alberta's West Edmonton Mall, and London's Oxford Street. The group cited their past deadly attack on a mall in Nairobi, Kenya as a precedent. Homeland Security is taking this issue very seriously and is on heightened alert for attempts at radicalization within the United States, even without sufficient funding these days. Afghanistan was more or less a battlefield for much of its recent history. The residents were, however, completely taken aback by deadly avalanches in the northern mountains of Afghanistan. Since Tuesday, 168 have been accounted for as dead in the Panjshir province due to the almost daily avalanches. Rescue workers have not been able to reach the worst hit area, so it's likely that we'll see more bad coming out of this. The Iranian government may despise the United States, but it seems like they can't help but love Michael Bay. We all love Michael Bay. They expressed their fondness by conducting a Hollywood-style military exercise where 100 speedboats and land-based launchers charged in a tank of frankly shoddy mock-up of an American aircraft carrier. Of course, in typical Michael Bay style, the charge of the Light Brigade ended with a terrific explosion and the warm, fuzzy feeling from knowing that you and your fellow yachters just blew up a fake ship with light rockets and mortars. But Brigadier General Hossein Salami knew how to market his movie. He said that most of Iran's full military capabilities will remain secret. I have to say, using 100 speedboats to charge a giant studio prop is pretty telling of what other things they have in store, but hey, at least it's still going to be a better love story than Twilight. A 62-year-old law was overturned in South Korea when the country's constitutional court struck down a law that said adultery is punishable. Now, there will be no prison sentences for unfaithful spouses charged with adultery. I must make clear that this move is not a statement of condoning extramarital relationships. Rather, according to the majority of the justices, the law was removed to account for the radical social changes that have happened in South Korea over the past 6 decades. When the law was first put into effect in 1953, Korean women held a largely submissive role in society and continued to do so for the several following decades until more and more women became mostly economically even with men, even though gender biases still unfortunately prevent complete equality to this day. Since women are no longer considered to be the weaker sex, the court contended that it is not necessary to have a law based on that notion. There still are many who disagree with this decision, and the debate is still up in the air. On the other hand, the trial of Eddie Ray Routh for the murder of former Navy SEAL sniper Chris Kyle is said and done. The Texas jury decided that the defense's insanity case for Routh's severe PTSD was not compelling enough and delivered a guilty verdict, and along with it, life in prison without parole. And does anybody remember when we used to talk about train wrecks as something of a joke? It always occurred to me personally that trains are something tried, tested, and safe over nearly centuries of usage. This past week, however, another crash shook many people's faith in American railways. In Oxnard, California, a pickup truck and Metrolink train were involved in a fiery crash and derailment that caused 30 injuries, thankfully no deaths. Yesterday, the truck driver responsible for the crash, Jose Alejandro Sanchez Ramirez, was released from jail. He has been collaborating with investigators, and his account of the event seemed to match up well with what had actually happened. Also, investigators have cleared Sanchez Ramirez from intoxication as a cause of the crash. For now, it really seems like the accident was an innocent mistake gone horribly wrong. Still, there may be several lawsuits later on. And did I mention how much Iran likes to make Hollywood-style movies? Well, they have a good plot going on with Argentina right now as we speak. You see, in 1994, a Jewish center in Argentina was bombed, killing 85 people. 21 years later, federal prosecutor Alberto Nisman drafted a complaint explaining how Iran was behind the bombing, and that President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner covered up Iran's role in the bombing. A few days later, Nisman was found dead with arrest warrants for the president and the foreign minister in the trash can, with strong evidence pointing toward a political assassination. Yesterday, Judge Daniel Rafecas unequivocally dismissed Nisman's allegations, while prosecutor Gerardo Poisita took over for Nisman and renewed the request. Now, this is some political thriller. I would much prefer someone to make this into a movie than some Michael Bay act with exploding cardboard aircraft carriers. Well, scratch that. I don't really think it was made from cardboard. There are a lot of speculations that it was made from wood, but that's not important. What is important is that the Federal Communications Commission passed new restrictions promoting net neutrality, preventing companies like Comcast and Time Warner Cable from determining which websites get higher speeds. The FCC proposed that internet should be considered to be a utility, an equivalent to water and electricity to which all citizens have a right to equal access. The monopolistic companies still have until summer to make their case, and it's our job to defend internet freedom until the FCC rules are firmly in place. And ever since reindeer herders found a 260-foot wide crater in Siberia, more and more have been appearing. Most recently, satellite images have shown that at least 4 additional larger craters surrounded by numerous smaller craters. There are 2 possible theories as to why these are happening. The first is that high-pressure gas was violently and explosively released when the permafrost above melted, thereby making a large crater. Another theory is that underground methane mysteriously ignited and caused explosions. In any case, we can just hope that there is no real damage to the people who live there. But still, reindeer herders. How awesome is that? That's like my new dream job now. Well, finally, you guys probably all heard of the dress that seems like it's both blue and black and white and gold at the same time. I swear you guys probably took off 2 hours from my chemistry homework because I had to research how this could happen. And this is what I found. First of all, I would like to point out that the dress is actually blue and black. It's made from blue and black fabric. There's no 2 ways about it. Now that that's clear, according to Science Alert, the difference in the color we see is how your brain corrects for surrounding light exposure and the wavelength of the light reflected from the actual object. When you look at the dress, your brain subtracts the other wavelengths from the real color of the objects you're looking at. Some of you have brains that color correct to white and gold, others to blue and black, hence the difference. Science explains everything. It's supposed to make life easier. If only you guys made for easier AP subjects. And that was, well, in this case, 1110 news for this week. I'm Andy Hong. Make sure to like us on Facebook and YouTube, and I'll see you next week with more of your top 10 news in 10 minutes. Stay educated, and as the late Leonard Nimoy, who played the immortal Spock, used to say, live long and prosper, my friends. Live long and prosper.